Welcome to the Rocky Road Podcast, brought to you by Rockbusters, with your host, Dennis Wager. Dennis is a best-selling author and an expert in demolition, rock, and concrete breaking, as well as a professional blaster. He is also president of Rockbusters Incorporated, along with his son, Brian. On the podcast, you'll hear exciting stories of how these challenge types of rock and concrete jobs are done. You'll learn about the uses of expanding grout and explosive devices. But furthermore, you'll hear about some of the hurdles and struggles entrepreneurs and business owners have had along the way, how they got started, and how they broke through the obstacles and found the path to success. Along with that, some insight for young people and people wanting to get into the industry. So listen in. I hope you enjoy the show. Now, here's Dennis Wager.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's a great day. I'm up in Kamloops today, which is very nice and sunny up here. It's a long weekend here in BC. Want to welcome to the show today my guest, Tony Looney from Bedrock Equipment Limited. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you very much, Dennis. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's great that you can join us here. So, Tony has a great business. He builds drills for excavators and skid steers. And it's relatively new business, but does a very good product, it seems. And got to know Tony through LinkedIn, and we've had quite a few conversations back and forth. And just wanted to bring him on so he could show us his drills and kind of all that he's up to. So again, thanks for joining us, Tony. Maybe just give us a little bit of your background about your previous business before you started the drill building company.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I operated a specialist civil engineering business here in Ireland from 1991 right up to 2018. So we got to see the bad times, the good times, and the bad times again. That business initially started out as a sort of a general groundwork contractor. And I met some interesting engineers that introduced me to the field of underpinning foundations, because in Cork, for many years now, we've had a situation where foundations have been adversely affected by water escaping from aging pipes and drainage pipes and water service pipes. That business involved the replacement of the drains and the water mains, along with drilling the foundations and pumping in liquid cement to compensate for the washout of the substructure tiles. That got me into the drilling. That was my first introduction to drilling, and of course the grouting, cement colloidal mixing of grout and pumping it.
And then you've wrapped that up after a number of years, and now moved into just building drills.
Yes. I transferred a little bit from the underpinning to rock anchoring, soil nailing, coastal erosion, slope stabilization. So we, in a rather challenging market here in Ireland, it was necessary to build our own equipment. We couldn't, particularly at the earlier stages, couldn't afford to buy expensive equipment, so we built our own, and it was generally found it very effective, and I came to the conclusion that when I would retire that business, that I would commercialize what I had already built, because it would be a shame to see it go to waste. And that's I commenced that in 2018.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I admire kind of the what do you call it, the drive and the ambition that it takes to take that on, because I know that's not an easy task. I can also personally relate to that, because I've also had to do things the hard way and start up, from nothing, and a lot of times you don't have the money to buy fancy drills and things like that. And I see that as a barrier for many guys in the industry. Is like, uh, it's easy to get some hand drills and to go drilling, but it's always that big leap to get into an excavator drill just because of the cost, and deters of many people from doing that. So yeah, I could see how that is a very you know a good thing for a lot of people. And I can also imagine the difficulties and challenges that you would have to get here.
Thank you, Dennis. I would have to accept that I anticipated it taking 1 year and X amount of money, whereas it's taken 6 years and six
More
times
money.
as much money. Yeah,
That's what they say with construction, Tony. It always costs more money than you thought, and it always takes longer than you thought.
yeah.
But in the end, it's always the drive and the perseverance that gets you there, right? And it's I find a lot of times the people that are able to persevere through that are the ones that are successful. And so many people just give up before that. They crest that peak of the mountain there. But yeah, anyway, good for you. I'm happy that you're taking this on. I've seen videos and stuff that you've sent me of the drills, and they look really good. Um, Maybe you could just start to explain a little bit to us about the difference between hydraulic drills versus pneumatic drills, and which you're building.
Yeah, well, before I came on, I should have asked you what you were going to ask me, but I anticipated this question actually. I don't know how, but yeah, because it is quite interesting. And if I can manage my computer well enough, I have done up a little Excel here regarding same. Um, yeah, your question is the difference between the pneumatic and the hydraulic hammers. And of course, you've got an in between as well, Dennis. You've got some brands have hydraulic rotation
Right.
and
Yeah.
pneumatic percussion.
Yeah.
Um, the first thing to remember, I think, is that every drilling system requires some means of flushing. So almost inevitably, you're going to need air anyway. So the question is how much air you're going to need. Of course, you can flush with water as well. It's not something I've done much of. It's quite simple, but it probably in many instances is a bit messy, as you'd appreciate, particularly if you're
Yeah.
indoors. So then, right, we get the simplest hammer of all is the handheld rock drill. That's probably the most basic that everybody would be familiar. And they've been around
Yeah.
forever. And strangely enough, despite the fact that they are in a really challenging environment, they are extremely resilient, I would have to say, if they're lubricated properly. Lubrication, and if the the pressure isn't too high or too much volume, they, in my opinion, they seem to last forever. But yeah, so that's if we look at for instance, that's the Chicago pneumatic is one example of there are several, but that that
Yeah.
that unit runs on about 129 CFM at 6 bar.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now so if you want to convert that, then so you know now how much air you need. That of course does the flushing as well. So you've got excess air that travels down through the bit to actually do the flushing. So it's an all in one. And then people don't want to use those hammers anymore because of the effects that they have on the body, and particularly for longer periods. So it's becoming quite common to mount them on a boom or a pillar.
Mhm.
And of course, you can have that. That can either be air driven or hydraulic driven. But we tend to go for hydraulic for a few reasons. One is that air motors are or gearboxes are much bigger and heavier. They require sort of two hoses, pretty large hoses, to get both directions. Not saying that you always need a second direction, and air is not as controllable as oil is. So
Sure. Yeah.
we, particularly from an e-stop perspective, so we go for hydraulic drive. That's the up and down, and the pneumatic hammer in that instance. We are hoping to develop a hydraulic pump that is air driven. So that would mean that you only need a compressor to actually operate the hydraulic up and down and the hammer.
That's interesting.
Am I going on too much?
No, that's great. It is very interesting. And I think I just kind of want to bring our listeners around to a point of, kind of some of the struggles that I had, or questions and thoughts that I had, getting into the drilling, which was like just that question, like hydraulic or pneumatic. Once you start getting into plumbing different lines into a machine, it's one, expensive, and two, it really dedicates one excavator or skid steer to that drill. And it does not give you the flexibility of, hey, I want to ship the drill over to a different state or province and rent a machine or put it on, Bob's machine. You're stuck with the one machine. Whereas, I see the advantages of hydraulic, but I also see the flexibility of having something that's all pneumatic. But I'd like your idea about the pneumatic driven hydraulic system. That's very interesting. So maybe we could also go back to the kind of the beginning of, like, how would you suggest somebody pick a drill? I mean, I know it's obviously like a diameter hole that you want to drill, but and a lot of times it's cost, like we started talking about. Any suggestions on how a person would start that process or journey of how I'm going to pick what drill I want?
Yeah, well, I think maybe the next thing, Dennis, to understand is, and for your listeners maybe to know, and that is that for drilling, from my experience of drilling, there are two types. One is for soil nailing, and the other is for rock anchoring. Well, let's make it simple by saying that they're the only two, but there are probably several others. But the interesting thing about rock drilling is actually possibly easier in some instances because you need far less torque than you do for soil nailing. So that's a fundamental difference between drifters. Just to go back on it again, for soil nailing, you need a certain extra torque, relatively speaking, and than you do for rock anchoring. So that would be the first thing to consider. Are you simply drilling rock, or are you soil nailing? When you're soil nailing, you're twisting a bit, for want of a better description. If you're using a Ishebek or Dividag or whatever, you're twisting a bit into the soil, and depending on how hard that soil is, you're going to require torque. So that's then the second thing is, okay, we'll assume you want to stick with air. So I just told you a moment ago that the CP69 required 120 CFM. But if you happen to be lucky enough to have a 350 CFM compressor in the backyard, well, you could go for something like Natlas Copco 120, BBC 120. That requires about 350 CFM at 6 bar. And now you have the capacity to drill, I think they say up to 70 mil hole. It's about 2.5 inches anyway.
Okay.
So that's on the on if you want to keep with the pneumatic, which, as we said earlier, is easy enough to control. Then if you wanted to go for one of the scenarios with the hydraulic drifters is that they take quite an amount of oil. Now, it's not a big deal if you're using a large excavator, but if you want to get drilling with something like a 1.5 ton or a 3 ton, you may not always have sufficient oil
Right.
flow. And we, as you know from previous conversations, one of the advantages that we felt in our business is that we build drilling systems that accommodate most makes or all makes of drifters and drills. So I hope I'm free to talk about the different manufacturers. The probably three most prominent ones that I'm familiar with are you've got the Doofer, which is a hydraulic only. I don't think they do any pneumatic drills. Doofer, I think they do all hydraulic.
I
You've
think you're
got
right.
Eurodrill. The Eurodrill that I'm familiar with, they're also a very good, great hammer actually. And they generally have extra torque, so they're, as far as I know, are more designed around the rock anchoring, the soil nailing, than they are specific to rock drilling. And Marini do some great products. They've got pneumatic hammers, pneumatic only. They've got a combination of hydraulic rotation and pneumatic percussion, and they've also got hydraulic, pneumatic, and percussion. The interesting one is their hammer, which is half and half, as I call it. So it works on quite a small excavator because it only needs about 30 litres a minute for the rotation, and probably about 150 CFM for the percussion.
Okay.
If you go to their hydraulic only, so hydraulic, they need about 30 to 50 for the rotation, and I think about the same for the percussion. I'm just looking at the. I'm sorry, I haven't it written down here. I thought I had it written down. Yeah, it's all on their brochures anyway. But so you can very quickly find yourself up in the sort of 50 to 60 for percussion, 30 to 40 for rotation. So you're then into 80 to 100 litres a minute, which is a big enough excavator if you're going down that track.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So really then you're manufacturing the drill systems, you're mounting whatever drifter on your unit, and then marketing that as a package, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. And what do you see as a market for you, or what do you have in mind to develop that market?
I've probably spent too much time prototyping and manufacturing so far to really have a proper strategy. And it probably disappoints me a little bit that I'm not further ahead with that. I haven't really spent enough time thinking about it. But on the other hand, we are getting a reasonable amount of traction, which is being developed through LinkedIn. And I am probably happy enough to have the time to come to terms with the various requests and also the scaling up of our factory here. So if I were to get too many orders in the morning, I may not be able to cope. So I'm taking it bit by bit.
Yeah, that's good. That's kind of the other problem with business too, right? You get too many orders and then you struggle to fill them all. So is it a very big factory that you have over there, or do you have a big staff?
We've got about 3,000 square feet here at the moment, Dennis.
Okay.
But we've got a lot of very skilled operators, small-time operators, and some of them quite big as well. So we outsource generally to keep our costs down. we don't have all of the equipment that's required to build a drilling system. So we, at the specialist areas, we outsource that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So do you have plans on building your own drifters, or are you just going to continue the way that you're going? Just build the drills themselves?
Yeah, I have approached a few firms to build specific units for me because I think there is still a gap in the market there to balance, to get the right balance. Yeah, I do. Yes is the answer, but maybe that's going to take a little while.
Yeah, for sure. No, I also see a gap in the market. I think there's a huge market, in the field that we see, which is in between, the small handheld operations and the guys that are buying the $1 million drills. You get the big drilling and blasting contractors who have a fleet of drills and the money behind them to write a check to buy what they want, which is great. But then you have such a wide range in the middle there with guys that we're talking about, where they do some smaller jobs. They have maybe one drill or two drills, but need another one, or don't have a drill at all and want to enter the market, and they don't really know the right way. So no, I think it's great. I see, like, with a lot of the companies that we work with, um, we deal with like a wide variety, like the whole gamut between big contractors and small contractors, and even homeowners that have a boulder in their yard. They want to break it, so those you would drill by hand. But we have a lot of excavation contractors who, when they're doing deep excavations for towers, now here they're able to go down 100 feet because they're able to go up so high. And this keeps getting higher and higher, which means they need to keep going deeper. Yeah, I know in New York, they just changed the building code in the one area that we're in, Port Charles, to go instead of one story down. Instead of being able to build 4 stories high, which would allow for one level of parking, now they're able to go 12 stories high, which is 2 levels of parking. And of course, the second level now is all in the rock, which is really really hard in New York. So it opens up, the more the world grows and population grows, it opens up for everybody, right? Like the big guys, but also the guys in the middle that are doing these mid-sized jobs. And I see, that's really the target for drills like you're producing.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. There's absolutely no doubt that something that's becoming most apparent is that a lot of the guys, the inquiries we get, people expect me to say 120,000. That's the way they think. When in fact we can actually build systems that will do precisely what they want. Not the same as the 120,000 euro drill, but they never needed that in the first instance. We can build drills for a fraction of the cost and it'll do exactly what they need.
Yeah, exactly. I think the key here is to get the drills, the same as our stuff too. Like we have, as you know, we make our expanding grout. We now make expanding grout for large diameter holes, so we can go into 3-inch up to 4.5-inch diameter holes, which allows you to space your holes out a lot farther apart. For those, you need to get into the down the hole hammers to drill a bigger hole. And then our splitters, we can build to, believe it or not, 10 inches in diameter. So, a 6-inch diameter hole gets you a big splitter. Everybody's familiar with the Darda handheld splitters, but the reality is that the Darda splitters, they put out 25.5 tons of force or pressure, whereas our 6-inch splitters put out a little under 500 tons of force, and our 10-inch splitters put out 1,200 tons of force. So you start, and also not just the force, but you're starting to take out, sections that are 4 feet, 5 feet deep, and you can put in, 6 splitters at a time in a row, and you can break out a lot of rock. So your production is really starting to crank up and be a lot more comparable to conventional blasting. And that's really what we're always compared to, is like, how do you take an alternative and be competitive or comparable to blasting. Um, as there's always jobs where people or blasters get stuck and they can't blast, or it could be an engineer or architect saying, "Hey, I can't allow blasting here at this site for whichever reason, but what is the best way to do it?" And as soon as you switch past, the big blasting company is not coming to do your job, because his drill is set up to drill 200 feet a minute or whatever they drill, and that's what they want to do, is drill and blast and drill and blast and drill and blast. But it opens up this whole other door of actually kind of building like a community of guys that are into this sort of alternative. It's not exactly an alternative, but you know what I mean. It's kind of like a little off the mainstream.
Absolutely, yeah, Dennis. I'm intrigued as to why your system of rock bursting isn't far more popular than it is. I mean, breaking rock with hydraulic rock breakers has got to be the most inefficient process in the world.
You mean with the hammers?
With hammers, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it's what people know, and it's really just educating people.
Yeah,
it's getting our products and tools and methods into people's hands to say, "Here, try it out, and you tell me how you like it or what you think." Right? I remember somebody told me back in the the late 1800s, when dynamite was invented. Before the invention of dynamite, actually, all they had was black powder. Remember, for like the guns and so on. But then dynamite was invented, and the way that they sold it was they just went around with sticks of dynamite and said, "Hey, we have this new dynamite stuff. Let me show you." And they would just do demonstrations for people, and then it's caught on.
yeah.
So I think that's kind of the same.
Yeah.
You can have the better mousetrap or the better way, but you got to get it in people's hands. So what would you suggest, as a piece of advice for young people wanting to get into this kind of business?
Sorry, Dennis, say that again.
Do you have a piece of advice you'd like to give contractors or entrepreneurs or maybe young people, students wanting to learn this type of business? But what advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I always like to help out young people and give them advice, but you've probably caught me a little bit there. I think, well, safety is number one, and not to do something that like using handheld rock drills for a prolonged period of time. As I meet a lot of young people in Ireland that are doing that right now, and whilst they're making a quick buck, I think it's going to have long-term implications for them. That would be one probably major thing. But I think there's a great business to be had in learning the rock removal trade in the very way that you've just described, which is shallow drilling with hydraulic rock splitters or the expandable grout. But I think the hydraulic rock splitter seems it's a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah, that's what I think too. So I agree with you. I think it's just a matter of developing some kind of educational stuff. Like, we're making new how-to videos all the time, showing people how to do it. But it's really just getting it out there more. Now we're actually going to do a demonstration coming up in September in California. We're going to do some blasting with Royex and do some rock breaking there. We may even start to build a tunneling training center, so people could come over and learn tunneling and use of a jack leg and all that kind of stuff. And we're kind of toying around with that now. We have a location we could do that at. But yeah, no, it's exciting. I think there's a great future in all of this. And yeah, anything else you'd like to add, Tony?
I don't think so for the moment, but it has been my first podcast, Dennis. I was apprehensive about it initially, but
Yeah,
maybe now that
I twisted your arm.
that you've got me going, but I've enjoyed it. And,
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear.
and
Yeah, you did great, just like a pro. It's like
thank
your
you.
100th episode.
I hope your listeners have learned something from me. I'm always available. They can contact you, Dennis, and if somebody wants to talk about choosing a particular drill or whatever, I'm happy to discuss.
Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody has any questions, just reach out and let us know. We can get you the answers. We can help you with whatever drills you may need. And then happy to work together. Okay, well, that's great, Tony. Thanks for joining us on the show, and hope you have a fantastic day.
Thank you, and take care, Dennis. Bye-bye
Okay,
now.
you too.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to be a guest on a future episode and tell us your story, visit our website at www.rockbusters.com. If you have a project and would like to learn more about our products, or if you're interested in partnering with us and becoming a distributor, give us a call. Thanks again. We appreciate your support.